Okay, so like I was saying, during the research phase, when you guys were giving different questions on farmers and agriculture and food wastage and all of that, you guys were able to answer different questions based on your research. And then from our discussions, you people were able to kind of get the problems, like try to understand this user pain points and try to have a deep knowledge of what each of what either the farmers or the rest, the restaurant owners were facing, the pain point that they were facing. And then if you've gotten to that point when you've done your own research, like you've asked all the questions, if you want to use the survey or if you want to use questionnaire, and then you've asked all the whole questions to your potential users, or if you're not taking an approach of asking questions, you want to do research based on what you have on the internet. That's they call it secondary research. So primary research is you are actually interacting directly to the users, like you are asking them direct questions, either from questionnaires or surveys. That's what you mean by primary research. But from secondary research, is mean you are leveraging on what other people have said about this subject matter. So you just go to the internet and then you search the internet about, okay, food wastage. Why is there so much food wastage in farmers? So you are just reading different reports, and then you are kind of um getting a very detailed understanding of these pain points of your potential users. So whichever method that you finally decide to go through, the main aim is to just try to understand the pain points of these users. And if you are done doing your research and then you want to now start designing, because that's the end product. You want to be able to design a product for the pain point that you were able to that you were able to um search, like find out from all your whole research. So like for you to be able to now move from the research to your UI design, like to your final mobile application design or your website design, there's a process. You don't just move from research questions straight to Figma designing to start designing anything you want to design. There's a process to it. So when you are done asking your questions and then you now want to put yourself in the user's shoes, that's what most designers will always put it. Try to put yourself in the user's shoes. And how can you put yourself in the user's shoes? You know, that statement just sounds very vague. It's not really explaining how you actually put yourself in the user's shoes. So there are various ways you can actually help to see the pains of these users from their eyes. And that is what we are going to go through for today. So there are so many methods and there are so many tools you can use to try to better understand this user's pain points. And when you are done understanding this user pain points, that is when you can now start developing ideas of how to solve that pain point. So from our discussion in our last class, at the end of our class, these were the problems that we listed out. So we had the overproduction, like farmers are producing more than what they actually sell. So it ends up a waste at the end of the day, or lack of storage facilities. That's for the restaurant owners, I believe. So when they buy these perishable foods and then they don't have a means of storing this food, it gets to waste also. The lack of transport facilities. You know, farmers might find it difficult to be able to transport their goods from one location to another location. Then to reuse food. So it is the same storage kind of. So if your food is already spoiling, what can you do to avoid this from wasting? So these were like the very few problems I was able to get from you guys. But for the purpose of this class, I just decided to just pick the first one to explain the process of trying to understand the pain points and then generating ideas for these pain points. So we're going to focus on this overproduction throughout this class, I believe. So for the overproduction, the solutions that we listed up from our head were to itemize daily consumption, get demands, and produce accordingly. So let's take this very first problem now. What problem are we trying to solve today? We are trying to solve the ability for people to produce according to the demand. You don't want people to be like, you don't want farmers or producers of anything, whether it's the food. Okay, let's be very used to what you're talking about, the food. We don't want farmers to be able to produce more than demand. And that is just what we are trying to solve. So let's just pick it as simple as that. So we tend to understand the concept. So, like I said, we are trying to incorporate the UX research findings into our UI design. And then we want to use what we found out from our research to make design decisions. And in order for us to be able to do that effectively, we have to go through a process. And this whole design process is not a very defined way. You can do a project today, and then you are using an entirely different design process. And tomorrow you are doing another design and another project, and you are using another type of design process. So it's not always it's not a you must follow this particular process. It's just for you to be able to know this process so that when the need arises for that company you are working for, then you can now incorporate this design process into your project. So for you to be able to incorporate this UX research, you have to go through some kind of brainstorming sections. That are brainstorming sections. The goal is to better understand the users, that's better have an in-depth knowledge of the pain points, and then generate ideas based on these pain points. So our process, our flow is going to start from creating a problem statement. Then we go into persona. I think I explained persona a little bit in our last class, but I felt like maybe I have to actually do an in-depth explanation to it. Then for persona, we will move into empathy map. Then we go to how might we. So the very first one is problem statements. And I've already explained what the problem we are trying to solve. The problem we are trying to solve is to able to make farmers or restaurant owners, for them to be able to produce their products according to the demands. So they don't get to overproduce what people need or even underproduce what people need. So we are also solving both the excess and the less. So you have to actually create a problem statement, because if you don't, just like for every company we have now, like many companies have goals and objectives, and then they'll say, what is the goal of this company? What is the objective of this company? It's because you are trying to have a direction. In your brainstorming section, you don't want ideas to just be flying out from left, right, center, and there's no focus, there's no direction in how your ideas are going to go. So that's the essence of creating a problem statement. And this problem statement, according to the industry standard, you have to follow the who, what, and why. So the who is, who are you designing this user for? Like, what is the potential user? So in this use case, our potential user are farmers and, let me say, restaurant owners, or people that also buy and sell, maybe like retailers. So those are your potential user. That's your who. If you still want to narrow it down, so you've used occupation to define your who, and you can also use age bracket to also define your who. And my age bracket, you can say, okay, I want to design an app for farmers who are within the age of 25 to 50. So you don't want a very large market share. You just want to narrow down your focus. So narrowing down your focus means that you are actually going to design something that will be very useful to your potential users. So most times people will say, design is not for everybody. Like, you're designing a particular application, and then even if, as much as you are trying to satisfy so many people, you cannot always satisfy everybody in this whole world. So that's the reason why you have to always find your niche. And creating the problem statements is going to help to answer the question of who are you creating this application for? And our who in this case is our farmers and restaurants. And what problem are you trying to solve? Like, when you are trying to create a problem statement, you don't want it to be, I'm just trying to do this because of this. You need to actually define what you are trying to do. So in this problem statement, we have farmers and restaurant owners need a way to predict demand better. So that is our what. What do you actually want to do? You want to be able to help them to predict demand better. That is just what they are trying to do. It's as simple as that. So the next what will I call it? Angle is the why. So you are trying to solve this problem because of what? You must have a reason to every problem you are trying of, to everything you are trying to do. And some people will say that it is only a madman that does things without reason. So if you are trying to build an application, why are you even trying to do this? Are you trying to do it for money? So people might say yes, but what is your sole aim of trying to actually solve this problem? We know that you want to solve this problem. Why do you want to solve it? So on this problem statement, it's saying because they often end up making or going more than what they can sell. So it's still boiling down to wastage. So you want to help them to predict demand better because you don't want them to waste this food. And it still boils down to trying to curb poverty or for resource management. There are so many reasons. But for your problem statement, you have to make it straightforward and simple as possible. And you always have to follow this procedure of who, what, and why. And it's very also important to know that even for just one project, like if you want to create like a feature, because most times, maybe if you are designing, you might want to design as a full-blown project, or you want to design just one feature in that app. So if you want to design a full-blown project, for example, you always have to have the main goal, like under that problem statement, you might not have to start breaking it down into sub categories, but you always have to have the main goal of that project. Or if it's a feature, you always have to have the main goal of that feature. And the same way we have problem statement, that is the same way we also have goal statements. But we are going to just focus on the problem statement, and it's always going to follow the who, what, and why. So it answers the question of who are you designing for, what do you want to design, and why are you designing it. So the next one is the persona. So persona is just a fictional personality. Like, it's not actually a real human being, like the way you have me as a human being, like Jacinta. Persona is not a real human being. You're just trying to create a fictional identity of your market share. So I've been mentioning market share like repeatedly. So like I said, finding your niche in the market. So when you are done actually doing your research, and then you have now known your potential users. So you want to now define who your potential users is. And your potential users can be defined with many um, characteristics. You can use age brackets. If you want to use age bracket, like I mentioned in designing for farmers between 25 and 15. So that's an age bracket. So that's also a persona. So that's also a persona. Then you can use location. So I want to design an application for people in Lagos, not for people in the East, for example. So, or for people that is in Nigeria. So there are some applications that we won't have today, and they will tell you, and you see that these applications are just for Nigeria. You cannot find it abroad. So that is also another way of defining your market share. And you can also define it by using the occupation. You can also define it, sorry about that. You can also use the occupation to define it. Like for this our use case, we are using farmers and people who sell perishable food or own restaurants. There are some applications, say for example, Uber, for example. The target market is not going to be students. Oh, it can be students. The target market is not going to be um it's not going to be infants, for example, like toddlers and children. That is not the target market. The target market is going to people who own a car and people who can drive, like drivers. So that's their own target market. That's their own occupation. So you can also define your users by the background. So by background, it can be anything. It can be people who were raised in the township, or people who studied all their life in abroad, or people who even grew up in Lagos. Like it could be anything depending on what you're actually designing. Like this other app I also I've seen. I think they call it Ajo. So like Ajo is like people who like if you want to contribute money like every day or every month, and then by the end of the month you can now get all your total contributions. You know that name Ajo is a Yoruba name. And then people who can design it can say, I just want to focus on people who can understand what Ajo means, and not people from the East. Like different applications can just focus on different people with different background. And even there's some applications that can translate Igbo to English. Their background is not going to people who can speak Yoruba. It has to be people who can actually speak Igbo and will understand Igbo. So different background with different applications. And then it now comes to goals. So what are the goals of these people? So it could be, for this case, it could be to reduce food waste, and it could be to predict customer demand accurately. And then the challenges could be inconsistent. So what we are trying to do, the essence of this persona is you are trying to define your user. And for a project, you can have as many personas as possible. You can have like up to 5 persona or more than, like it mustn't have to be just one. You can have multiple personas. So what you're trying to do is that when you have gotten your niche, you've gotten your market share, you're not trying to define it based on the characteristics of this market share. So we are saying that my market share is based on people who are farmers and are within the age of this, and they also do this. So this is a persona of what you are trying to create to define your market share. So that is why I said persona is not an actual human being. It's just you trying to define your different market share that you have able to research based on the process of researching. And this is just there are so many ways you can define, you can create your personas. It mustn't be this method. If you go to Google and you just type persona, you can see so many examples. Some people even use tabular form. Some use like different. It's just a very free. The main goal is just for you to be able to define your user's characteristics. And this quote is just you are trying to create the personality of this user, of this persona, of this particular user niche, of this your market share. And it's not always compulsory that you have to define it based on all these I listed there. There's the age, location, occupation, background. They can use this, you can use some of these, you can use this and use other things. You can even use height. Some even use I want I my market share is people who are within the height of 5 feet to 10 feet. So there's actually no particular characteristics you can use. You can use anything to define your market share. So that's about persona. So I think there is a flow to this so that we don't miss the flow. So remember I said you've done your user research and then you are trying to get what the actual problem is. So for you to be able to understand or try to there's this word, try to define what your problem is. You create your problem statement. So from this problem statements, you have to define who is facing this problem and what the problem is and why you want to solve the problem. Then when you are done making this problem statement, you now come to try to understand who you are solving this problem for. That is like putting yourself in the user's shoes. And the only way for you to put yourself in the user's shoes is by understanding, having an in-depth knowledge of who this user is. And you can do this by having different characteristics of this user. So the same way where you meet somebody for the first time, and then you are trying to get to know more about the person. You know, the kind of questions you'll be asking is, what is your name? What do you do? Where do you work? You know, all those things kind of define who that person is. So in a way of trying to define your users, you are trying to better understand them, because you have to first of all start with understanding your user before you now want to start creating problems for them. You cannot create effective solutions for them. Sorry. You cannot create effective solutions for them without understanding who you are even creating the solutions for. So that's the essence of creating a persona. So you are trying to visualize, like creating a picture of who your users are. So when you have created a fictional personality of these users, you now move into creating an empathy map. So my empathy map is also a visual tool, and it's still the main goal is still boiling down to understanding your user. And by understanding your user, you're trying to understand the person's thoughts, the person's feelings, and the person's behavior. So the same way, for example, maybe if you have met people who are kind of psychologists, for example. Okay, like all these people who even try to detect crimes. Like most time when I watch, if I watch some crime movies, and then you will see some murder of between like maybe somebody killed his friend, for example, and then the detective, just by asking questions to this person, is able to detect that this person is lying. The person is not actually telling you with their mouth that they killed this person, but from the countenance, from the kind of words the person says, or the behavior and everything, you're already understand, like you already know that this person actually committed this crime. But empathy map is not about crime. This empathy map is just like the word empathize. You are trying to empathize with your users. So you are trying to think. This is just the idea of putting yourself in their shoes. You're trying to like feel yourself, like you are the person that actually feeling this pain that they are going through. So you see yourself as a farmer, even if you can never be a farmer in the future. You see yourself as a restaurant owner, and then you try to visualize these pain points that you've researched on. How will it actually make me feel when I'm experiencing this pain point? So that's the idea of creating an empathy map. So an empathy map is divided into 4 categories, and is wait, so have you guys gone through this empathy map before? Let me be sure I'm not repeating.
No, Mama.
Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So and the empathy map is it divided into 4 categories. The say, think, does, and feel. So what does the user say? What the user says, what the user thinks, what the user does, and what the user feels. So what the user says is okay, like it could be passive or it could be active. So this say comes in when, for example, you must have done a um a survey or a questionnaire or an interview, and then you are trying to ask this user what their pain points are, and then you can just jot a quote, maybe a particular quote, like the user say, this can be very frustrating. That particular quote, you can just write it down somewhere during your user research, then bring it in when you are doing your empathy map. So what the user says is maybe during your research, they must have said something either actively or passively, and then you try to note it down, so that it's just trying to understand, okay, why did this person actually say this? It means that this could mean something that we could look into. But if you didn't actually did a direct survey, maybe you did the secondary survey, where the secondary research, where you actually leverage on what other people has done, you can just imagine them saying this based on your research. So in my persona, I named my fictional personality as Sarah, even though there's no actual Sarah. So this is Sarah, and Sarah says this: I want to provide my customers with the freshest ingredients possible. So these are the possible things that Sarah might say based on my problem statements. So remember that whatever this empathy map is always linking to your problem statements. So if you have different things that the users were saying, you link them up to the different problems that you are trying to solve. So if you want to solve like 5 problems, each problem will have their own empathy map, and then will have their own personas and all of those things. So the users could also say, I want to reduce food waste. Reducing food waste is crucial for both my business and the environment. I mean, that is what a possible farmer or a, a restaurant owner would likely say based on this food wastage um, topic. And then you want to so you're trying to understand the user's thoughts. That's why we have these things here. So what will user be thinking based on this problem? How can I better predict demand to minimize over purchasing? So that is one thing that the user might be able to think. So by doing this exercise, you are trying to imagine you, that you are the person that is actually facing this problem. And that is why you are able to come up with all of these different sections. And it's not a must that it actually have to be two. It can be as many as possible. And there are different there are different there are different tools, um there are different websites you can use to, is on this one, you can use to create this empathy map. Escape. Like we have Mirror. I think when I was, like, over the years, I used Mirror to create my empathy map. So you can see this, like this already has a template. You don't have to design it from scratch. And you can see the different sticky notes. So most times we use sticky notes. So in my former place of work, we usually have a board, like a actually big board, where we just divide it into four, and then we say says, this, things, does, and feels. So we actually use a real sticky notes, like all these paper sticky notes. We use it for real, and then we write and staple on that section of on the board. But technology has made it easy for us that even if you are not working physically with somebody, you can still do sticky note ideas. So you can see at the middle of the empathy map is your user. That's a fictional user. You don't have to be this person. And you can see it's still saying says, thinks, does, and feels. And beside it, you have your demographics and you have your goals and pain points. Okay, I wanted to just show us this particular one. So this is for Mirror. So this is for using Mirror to create your empathy map. You can also use Figma. But before we go to that, let's continue with the explanation. I deviated. So for the think is based on what the user is likely going to think when they're in this situation or when they want to come out from this situation. And for this particular problem statement, we have, I need to analyze customer preferences and trends to create a successful menu. So they're just trying to think of a solution. I want to be able to do this so that I can avoid wastage. And for this doors category, so this doors is like their usual routine, like their daily routine. What do they normally do on a daily basis? So for you to be able to understand what that daily routine is, you can kind of create your app to follow their daily routine. So let's say, for example, you have I want to create something that is okay. Let's say most of us have this notepad app on our phones where we kind of list the tasks we want to do. Say, like if you want for a day now, you can just list a daily task and then you write your tasks for that day, and then you can come and tick all of those things. When we were doing it manually, most times we just have a sheet of paper and then you just itemize your tasks for the day. And every time you complete that task, you come back and beside your task, you just tick it, or you kind of asterisk it if you have a problem with that task. So that's the same idea that was used to create this notepad, this note-taking app that we have. If you actually use it, you can see that if you are typing your task, beside it there's a tick there's a tick button just beside it, so that when you complete that task, you can come and tick it. So the same process in also, let's use another example. If, for example, you want to open a bank account, like you want to open an account in a bank, before all these whole bank apps came into play, if you want to open an account in a new bank, you have to go to the bank, and then they will give you this form to fill. You fill in your first name, your last name, and all of those things. So based on the like the original activities you have to do to be able to complete your opening of bank accounts physically, they use that same flow of activities to create an online experience. So you are trying to say, for example, you want to now open a bank account online. That same form you would have filled when you go to the bank physically. That is the same form you also fill when you're using your mobile app. So the essence of trying to understand the activities of these users is that they are trying to recreate it in a mobile experience. But while recreating it, you don't have to now follow it like step by step, like blindly. You can look for easier ways or innovations in order to recreate that same experience in a mobile experience. So it's the same way of if you are trying to open a bank account in your app, and then you can see you can pre-fill this information. It's not making the whole bank filling of bank form much easier as against just filling everything step by step. So the essence of trying to understand what your users' behaviors is that when you want to now create an experience for them, you are um, designing from a better standpoint. And for our use case, what Sarah does as our fictional human being is that she frequently checks inventory levels and adjusts orders based on past sales. So on this our use case, like over the years, as Sarah is selling her food, for example, she normally goes to her inventory and then or to her book and updates. She sold rice today, or she sold 10 plates of rice today, or she sold five five pieces of meat today. She goes to her book normally to write that down. So you understanding that that is a usual process can recreate that experience using a mobile app, and you can also add some innovations into it to make it much easier when she's now using that mobile app to perform that same task that she normally does. And also, and one other of her behavior, that's what she does, is she engages with local farmers to ensure a consistent supply of fresh produce. So this particular statement is already creating an idea of what you can do with your mobile app. So instead of her to be engaging with local farmers physically, you can still do that from your mobile app. So you can see how trying to understand these users is also creating different ideas for you. And then the next one is feel. How does it actually feel with this whole process? She feels stressed about managing her inventory because you're just wasting your time. Like imagine in cases where you have too many customers and then you now have to start putting the inventory manually. It's a lot of time wastage, and it could be very stressful at the end of the day. And she feels very passionate also about her mission but sometimes overwhelmed by demand or necessity. So it's still the same issue of demand and supply. So this is what your user actually feels, and this is what they can do, and this is what they do, and this is what they say, and this is what they think. So with this our two approaches, our persona and empathy map, we've tried to better understand who these users are, by defining them based on their age group or whatever definition you want to use, characteristics you want to use. You've better understood your users, and then by getting what they can actually say, what they think, what they do, and how they feel, you've also understood these particular users. So when you have properly understood these users, and remember that we've also gotten our problem statement. So you've gotten your problem, you've understood these users. So the next step is now creating ideas for this user that you've understood. So it moves us to the next phase of I think, let me also okay, like this particular one, like I mentioned. So let's see, this is let's recreate it. So this is on your Figma board. Like I said, if you want to try to create your empathy map, so when you click on this create new, you can see this Fig Jam board here. The design file is our normal design file we'll be using. So this Fig Jam board is for anything about brainstorming. So you can still use it to create your empathy map or your persona. But let's try to see if you can get templates instead of creating from scratch. So let's see if you can get like empathy map persona. So I think this one, this this is showing 4. This is showing, okay. Whichever one, it doesn't have to be in any particular. So you can see this is much complex. So you can see the empathy map here sees, says and does, thinks and feels. So these people, so this particular one, they combine the things and feels together, says and does, yes, sees, and then you have your pain and then your gain. So you can have this person that is trying to define your that personal information, is trying to define your users. And then if you want to create more sticky notes, once you click on this sticky notes here, you can now create more sticky notes. And then as you're creating, you're writing anything you want to write. So this is having my name because I'm signed in with my name. So maybe if you are trying to brainstorm with your group members on how to understand the users, you can just come to your Figma board and then you create your empathy map. So you can see at the middle of your empathy map is always your user before you direct into the different sections you want to direct them into. So when you are done actually understanding this, your potential users, then you now go into creating ideas for them. And there are various ways of creating ideas. I mean, if we want to go through every tool, yeah, we might even get confused. Like there are two that I wanted to talk about. This How Might We and Crazy 8. So the reason why I didn't talk about Crazy 8 today, because it have a constraint. Like I have to actually draw on paper, and because it's we're on a video call, if I'm drawing here, you guys will not really see. You guys will not really see what I'm drawing, and I cannot draw on my laptop like hand drawing. I can only do the hand wireframe on my laptop, but to draw. But I think I'll just explain what the Crazy 8 is. So first of all, this how might we. This how might we is just a very direct way of finding the answers to your problem. So you have a problem. The problem is farmers and restaurant owners need a way to predict demand better, because they often end up making or going more than they can sell. So how might we solve this problem? So there are different ways. So in a particular problem statement, you can have as many how might we as possible. So the main goal is to generate as much ideas as possible. So you can see in our last class when I was asking you guys, okay, you've listed the problems, what ideas can we have to solve these problems? And then, it was not really an easy process for us to think of ideas out up on the top of our head, because like, it can get confusing. So for you to aid this process, you can use the how might we questions to help you to generate ideas. And there are different ways you can use this how might we. So our problem statement is this: we want to be able to predict demand better. So there are different let me say categories that you can try to remake how to make this how might we, because you might want to ask some questions and then you are stuck on how to create these questions. And if you are trying to create these how might we questions, you don't have to be so vague and you don't have to be so direct. So you want to make it, so you want to create this question so that your team members will be able to give you ideas on how you can solve this problem. And they are also trying to be as direct as possible so that they can better understand what this problem is and then give you ideas on how you can actually solve this problem. So the different steps or the different categories you can use, this came from Google UX course, is first of all, you have to amp up the good. That amp up is like, yeah, like just see the good in it. Let us say that you have a problem, and then they will tell you see the good in every problem or everything happens for a reason. So you are trying to magnify the good from this problem. So just imagine that you've now found the solution to this problem. So you are trying to dwell on this good to create your how might we questions. And from this amp up the good, we've created how might we improve inventory systems. So the good in this problem is that we now have an inventory system, or we have an inventory system. So how might we improve inventory systems to better predict demand and reduce waste? So we are talking about the good of this inventory system. So we are trying to improve it and make it better to predict demand and reduce waste. So you remember that we've mentioned that it's possible that what our persona, what they normally do is that they go to their inventory and update their inventory. So our problem statement is, how can we now improve that inventory systems to make it better to predict demand and then reduce waste? So that's our number one how might we question. And from this how might we question, you can have as many ideas as possible, but I will just giving just one idea for the purpose of this class. So from this how might we, the idea I came up with is show farmers and restaurants how much to order based on sales and trends to cut down waste. So you've already established that these guys have an inventory system, yes, but this inventory system is not properly predicting demand. So how do you want to make this your inventory to be able to predict demand? And from my idea, I said you can now show farmers and restaurants how much to order. So yeah, so it's just like you are like a predictive measure. So based on their history, that based on this inventory, based on their data, based on what they've ordered before, you now want to predict what they should order, or what they should sell, or what they should produce based on their history. So the same way, if you are chatting with ChatGPT, and then as you are keep on asking more questions, is kind of a generative data. Is answering you based on what you've answered before. Or the same way we have weather forecast. So the weather forecast is predicting the weather that will likely be for today based on the past record. So the idea for this particular highlight tree is to show farmers and restaurants what they need to order based on their previous sales or based on the previous demand or based on the trends that we have. By trends, like, if we have restaurants around you and they now tell them that, okay, restaurant B and restaurant C, they sold 5 pieces of meat. So there's a likelihood that you actually need to order 5 pieces because of these other restaurants also sold this amount of goods. So that's a kind of a predictive measure of showing what to actually order or what to actually produce. Then this second action item is we are trying to explore the opposite. So our reference is always our problem statement. So the statement is we want to actually predict demand better. So let's try to check what the opposite is. No, like the reason why we are trying to allow them to predict demand better is you want them to because they often end up making or going more than what they sell. So the opposite of this statement is how might we help farmers and restaurants avoid running out of stock? So you remember that our problem was overproduction. That is, they had so many produce or they have so many products or they have overproduced what that's making it to waste. So for you to now explore the opposite is how can we now avoid them to avoid running out of stock? So whether that's because they are trying to solve the problem of not allowing them to overproduce food does not mean that there will not be some cases where they produce lesser than demand. So you want to also create ideas even for the opposites and even for that same statement. So for this particular how might we that we've created based on the opposites, the idea that we have is set up alerts for restaurants so we order items before they run out based on real-time sales data. So a particular farmer can say the only time I can order for yam is by the end of the month. And then based on your data, you've noticed that this particular month is going to be a month of they are going to request more than expected for yam just for this month for a reason that is best known to data. And then based on your app, you want to tell the farmer that you need to actually restock this amount of yam before you run out of stock based on this sales data that we've established before. So rather than just dwelling on trying to help your farmers in overproduction, you want to also help them in underproduction. So let's go to this third one. We have changed the status quo. So the status is just based on we know we are just focusing on farmers, on farm, everything has been on farm, on producing on. So we can just try to, they will always say, think outside the box. So rather than just focusing on this particular farmers and produce, demand and supply, and all of those things, let's try to take a step back and change a little bit of something. And then on this how might we question, we have how might we adopt tech solutions for demand forecasting in restaurants. So you are now leveraging on using tech solutions rather than using their normal process of putting inventory, writing inventory, and their normal behavior. So you are trying to look for another angle to solve this problem. And then the idea is coming from build a mobile app that uses customer app and just customer data to predict what menu items will sell best. So you see the same idea that happens in Netflix. You know, most time when we go to Netflix and then we are confused on what app, what movie to watch. For me, most time I just usually pick from the best 10 movies I can see when I'm confused. So for you to be able to predict what items will sell best for your farmers and or your restaurant owners, you are also helping them to order the right produce or produce the right product for that month. And in the long run, it's also avoiding wastage of food. Now, the next point we have, break the points of view into pieces. So it's just like where we have a long line, you want to break it into different categories, like into pieces. That just like you have a, okay, let me just say a goal, like where you have a company and then you have a goal, and for that goal you cannot have objectives. So that objective is like you are trying to break down this goal into different objectives, into different steps or different categories. So that's the same way you can angle you can also use to create your how might we questions. You can say how might we address the different demand prediction needs of farmers and restaurant owners. So you can see it's just focusing on demand. So that is what this how might we question is focusing on. Not even like you're not even focusing on the wastage anymore, or focusing on what other angle of the underproduction. The focus right now is just on demand, on having the different demand prediction. And the ideas can be hold separate sections for farmers and restaurant owners to understand their unique challenges and create tailored solutions. So this could even be offline or online, or you can just leverage on using the mobile app to create these sections. That is if you are dealing with tech savvy people, or you can even design a very simple experience that even people who are not so familiar with mobile devices can still participate in these sections. And it's very important to know that in your idea generation, there is no right or wrong answer. So in as much as I created an idea, it does not mean that this idea will stand when I'm trying to design this application for farmers. So in this ideation phase is quantity over quality. So you're not focused on how good is my idea, or the idea looking, or is it sounding good? Is it sounding fine? Is it sounding reasonable? You want just to create as much ideas as possible. And when you are done creating ideas, you now try to come back to these ideas and filter them. So you either group these ideas based on the similarities, or you filter them based on feasibility, like based on your company's budgets, constraints, based on time constraints or money constraints. So you're now filtering these ideas based on these things. Or you want to actually create a version, like I want to have version 1 of my app. Let us solve these ideas. Version 2, let's improve it to the second ideas. So that is now where you now start, categorizing and filtering your ideas. But on the ideation phase, nobody is bringing in one idea. So you have to bring in as many ideas as possible. And you can, one effective tool of bringing in ideas is by using this how might we questions. So another way of also bringing in idea, like I mentioned, is using the crazy eights. So by crazy eights, I wish I can demonstrate, but I'll just explain. So by creating eights, you can have this. So you see this eight, like the number 8. So the goal is for you to produce 8 ideas. Like don't produce more than 8 or less than 8. Just give me 8 ideas, and you have to do it within 8 minutes. So you use a timer. You can use your phone to set the timer 8 minutes. So most times, how we normally do it is you just have a sheet of paper, a white sheet of paper, and then you fold it into 8 pieces, like, so I can create this very unique lines on your sheet of paper. So in each of the parts, you just draw the idea that you have in your head. So let's say, for example, this our amazing problem statement. The first drawing can be um the first drawing can be okay, I'm seeing a predictive data. Someone saying something. I'm seeing a predictive data, and then I can now order based on this record. And the second idea drawing can be I'm having a section with farmers around me, and then I want to get their sales record. So another idea can also be I'm getting an alert in my phone that something wants to run out. I should go and order that stuff before it run out. So that's the main goal of doing this crazy eight exercise. So it makes your brain to think of anything, like anything wide, as long as it's just entering your head, just be drawing it like that. So you can see that very, very innovative solutions or very innovative ideas can come in when you are just being playful or when you're just being as casual as possible. So that's also another way of bringing in so many ideas. So it's not always we don't have to always follow either this how might do or crazy it. You can follow any pattern of ideas you want to actually follow to creating these your ideas. So on the phases of trying to filter these ideas, I mentioned it. So when you are now done generating 1,000, 1,000 ideas, and most times when you're on this space, you don't do this space only as designers. You can bring in software testers, you can bring in developers, you can bring in project manager, you can bring in the whole team to actually create ideas based on this problem you are trying to solve. Then when you are now trying to filter the ideas on what you now want to actually design, there are various ways you can filter this idea. So like I mentioned before, you can use your feasibility study using your budget and time constraints as in metrics. You can also use your competitive analysis. So your competitive analysis is that you are trying to check your competitors and checking what they actually do in the market. So I don't know of any company. I know that there will be companies maybe of people who actually have applications for farmers. They are obviously. So let's use, for example, we have Paystack. So Paystack is a financial app. The competitors will be likes like Flutterwave or Kuda Bank. So those are your competitors. And the way you actually get your competitors is there are two types of competitors. It could be direct competitors and indirect competitors. So let's focus on this our problem statement. We are trying to solve a problem for farmers and restaurants to predict demand better. So our direct competitors will be people who are also trying to solve this demand for farmers and restaurants. So they are doing what exactly you are trying to do, and they are focusing on the same people, on the same market share. These are your direct competitors. So when you are trying to filter your ideas, you want to actually check out what these guys are doing. How can I outshine them? What are the loopholes? Let's try to pick the idea that is actually going to solve these loopholes so that as we are entering into the market, we can have a quicker break-even point. So your indirect competitors can be people who are focusing on the same market share, but they are not solving the same problem. So let's say, for example, we have um, we have we have Netflix and Instagram. So let's say for Netflix, is focusing on um, Gen Z. Let's say Gen Z, for example. So Netflix is focusing on Gen Z, but Gen Z who loves to watch movies. That is their own market share. That's Netflix. Then Instagram, on the other hand, is that focusing on Gen Z, but Gen Z who loves to post pictures online. So you can see that they are both focusing on Gen Z, but they are solving different problems. So these are indirect competitors. It's either you are focusing on the same market share, or like it's either you are focusing on the same market share and solving different problems, or you are focusing on different market share and solving the same problem. So let's see if you can see for people who are solving the same problem but are focusing on different market share. Let's see for solving the same problem. Let's see WhatsApp and Teams. Teams, I don't know if you guys know Teams, Microsoft Teams. So you can see WhatsApp is still solving a problem of communication. Teams is solving a problem of communication. But Teams is focused on official use only. You can't be tracking somebody and then you are tracking a person on Teams. It doesn't really fit well. So it's focusing on people who are actually doing 9 to 5 work. We call them um ah, people who are actually working. They have a name for it. And WhatsApp, on the other hand, also solve the communication issue, but in a more casual, in a more friends and family kind of niche. Not just focusing on official use only. So I think it's almost similar with LinkedIn and say Facebook, for example. So while LinkedIn is focusing on official use, Facebook is focusing more on is or LinkedIn and Instagram. So the same post that you create on LinkedIn, different from the post that you create on Instagram. So you can see they are both focused on the same market share, but they are solving different problems. So these are also indirect competitors. So when you are trying to filter your ideas, you want to also check your competition to know the ideas that will stand and the ones that will fall out. So I think we are done with this whole generation of ideas and understanding users to the best of my ability. So, like I said, um, we can. There are various ways. Like this is also mirror where you can use to create your empathy map. Says, things, does, and feels, and then you can also use it to create your persona. This mirror. Or if you don't want to use mirror, you can just go to your Figma tool and then you use what's on your Figma tool. So with these, we have come to the end of our class for today. So when you are done now creating and ideating and doing all the whole brainstorming work, you now want to now start doing your wireframing, like trying to sketch how this your solution that you found, like you now have the ideas that you want to actually build. So you now have to sketch it and see how you can actually solve these ideas and solve these problems with these ideas. And that is where wireframing coming. So in our next class, we'll go through how to do wireframing. So do you have any questions so far? Nancy, let's hear from you.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Hi, okay. I wanted to ask a question. Are you going to sell yourself short if you don't mention trying to solve the problem accurately? Like you're stating the problem statement, but you're going to tell them you're going to resolve the problem at a measurable cost or in a measurable way, like not the word accurately, not the word exactly solving the problem. I don't know if you get what I mean.
No.
It's more like, are you selling yourself short if you don't use the word accurate? Because you said the goal is to solve the problem accurately. So are you going to sell yourself short if you tell them the goal is to solve the problem to an
Who is
expected
the them?
percentage?
Who is the them in the picture now?
Like who you are presenting to, maybe your
Okay, your
um,
stakeholders.
yes.
Hey, you must not exactly use that word accurately. I think I just used that word. You must not exactly mustn't use any particular certain words. That if I'm understanding what you're saying.
Okay. Okay, and my second question is that empathy map.
Can you rephrase that question again? Let me get what you're saying. Rephrase it again. Let
Are
me.
you selling yourself short if you're using the word exactly or accurately? Like if you're not going to use the word accurately or exactly, like for your goals,
You're not selling yourself
because
short. No.
you're because you don't exactly know what's like how much, because this now is this is our preferred solution, but we don't know if and later on is going to yield to the kind of solution we're trying that we have in our mind. I don't know if you get me.
Yeah, exactly. So like while the goal is you are trying to provide the best solution as possible. It's also um very possible that your proposed idea will not even be the will not even be the idea what you need, like what the users need. So it's possible that you might want to create a predictive demand diagram, for example, and then you go to ask your users, and they will tell you, no, that we don't want this particular thing. So it now boils down to what the users actually need at the end of the day. And you see, like in this whole design process, it's not a linear process. You can do your research, do your defining, do your ideation. And doing your ideation, you might not notice that there is something that I am missing, or there are some questions that I did not ask. So you can now go back again to your research. So at that point of your ideation, all your ideas is not always going to be written on stone. It can change at any point. You can even change when you are trying to design. You can go back again and change. So it's not always a written on stone method.
Okay, thank you very much. And I also wanted to ask about the empathy map. Can they be interchanged, like the says and the think? Because what I might say might be what I'm thinking, or what I'm thinking is what I'm saying, something like that.
Yes, they can be interchanged. So the main goal is just to understand your users. Like even that says and think, I think they are kind of, see that one I showed you guys, they kind of grouped it together. I think I saw it somewhere. Where did I see it? Was it here? They kind of grouped it together. things. Okay, these things says and does, says and does. So you can group anyone you want to group together. If you want to group your says and things together, it doesn't actually have a particular, like this design. They'll tell you this design is not a straightforward process. You just do what you think will help you achieve your goal better. Hope I
Thank
answered the
you.
question. Yeah. Um. Somebody else have another question. Do you have any other question? So you guys totally understood every single thing I said today. That's that's so sweet. All right.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, talking about how might we, you mentioned crazy eight cycle, and then I don't know, must the ideas be eight? Because I once read about it more like they gave example with getting papers and all, or folding paper, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
into just getting a more like a note into eight pieces and trying to bring, like, does it have to be eight, or is it just signifying multiple ideas?
That particular method, that you want to. So if you want to create ideas, it does not have to be a particular number. Like what I showed us today, I was just creating one ideas for each of how my two. So you can have one or two or more ideas depending on your amount of ideas that you want to create. But like I said, in this idea generation, there are different methods. And one of the method is crazy eight. So who have more than eight, you can have less than eight. So the main goal of this crazy eight is not the amount. They're not focusing on the amount, they're focusing on how fast it is for you to think of something. So when I say that for this crazy eight, you have to use a timer. So if you are doing your crazy eight and then you are doing it within 1 hour, for example, you're already defeating the idea of using crazy eight. So the main idea of using crazy eight is thinking of stuff as quickly as possible or as wild as possible. You're not trying to follow a particular rule or follow a particular pattern. Just think and draw. Think and draw. That's the idea of crazy eight. So if you defeat the idea because you want to create bigger, you want to create lesser, no longer using that method, you're not using another, maybe like um your own defined method to create your ideas. So, and like I said, in this design thing, even if you are trying to use a method, it's not built on stone. You can tweak it to what you want to do or to your own goal, depending on what you are trying to build.
Okay, thank you, man.
Yeah. All right. So, during my during my explanation, I mentioned how you can filter your ideas, like different ways you can filter your ideas. Can somebody just tell me one way?
Sorry, ma, I didn't get your question.
Okay, I said when you are done ideating, when you are done creating, like generating your ideas, and then you now want to decide which idea stands and which idea goes away. You're now trying to streamline your ideas to fit what you are going to build in the future. So you can do this by following some different metrics. So can somebody tell me any metric you can use to filter your ideas?
User persona, ma.
No. Explain,
Location.
explain user persona, like explain it
Um,
by user persona. Who mentioned user persona? Explain how you can use that persona to filter your ideas. Munachi, let's hear from you.
okay, I think the way we can use a method we can use to filter our ideas is by going back to the problem statement or the define um statement actually. Because if we understand the problem, then our ideas, the ideas that we have, we could actually find out the ones that aligned with the problem statement. Then with that we can decide on which one to go with.
Mm-mm. That's not the answer to the question. Who else can go?
Yes, ma. Location or background.
Mm-hmm. Explain. I want to, like, why do you say location and background?
Okay, so it's part of like the user persona. So under the user persona, there are like some things that we can use to filter the problem of the problem you're trying to solve. Like that, it's non-fictional. It's a non-fictional. It's not a real person, a natural person. So we're trying to see how the person is related to the problem, how the problem can be solved. So you can use the location based on whether the person. Okay, I think you said something like whether the person was stays abroad or lived abroad or is here in Nigeria or is in a rural urban area. So location to affect that.
Okay, that is not still the answer to my question. Okay, let me see if I can rephrase this question. I said when you have done all your when you've done all your you've defined your users, like you've created your problem statements, you've known the problem they are trying to solve, and then you've now understood your users by following the persona and empathy map method. You've better understood your users. So you now get to the phase of creating ideas for this problem. So at the point of creating ideas, I mentioned that there is no right or wrong answer. It's always quantity over quality. You have to create as much ideas as possible. So you can have, say, one problem statement and you can have like 100 ideas. So I'm saying after you have finished creating these ideas, how what metrics will you now use to be able to filter these ideas? So you want to be able to pick out of this 100, you want to pick, like you don't want to pick a particular number, but you want to pick the best 20 ideas, for example. What metrics will you use to pick this best 20 ideas? Because at your ideation method, you're not focusing on right or wrong. You are focusing your goal is just to create as many ideas as possible. So when you are done creating these ideas, what metrics would you now use to filter these ideas? Maybe let's hear from you. Or who else raised their hand? Esther, let's hear from you.
Okay, ma. I think one of the ways to filter those ideas is by analyzing the competitors as market. What how did you put it? Analyzing the competitors market, something like that. I don't know.
Thank you. That's just one way. I don't know. You guys want to surprise me this night. So I mentioned two methods. So one has been mentioned, one has been said, the computer analysis. So which other one also can we use? Which other metrics can we use to filter our ideas? All these names, I don't know why Titi Loco.
Ma, can I continue? I just remembered another one.
No, you mentioned one.
Okay, good evening, ma.
Yeah, really. Go on.
Hey, nice one. Good evening.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, another method is the prioritization. That one has to do with prioritizing the solutions that you want to work on, the ones that are valuable to the users.
Okay. Yeah, that is one of it, yes. Though we did not exactly, but that's also one of it. Prioritizing based on the either based on so there are various ways to prioritize ideas. You can either use by the constraints you have based on time or based on cost. You want to prioritize your ideas based on the available time or based on your company costs. And you want to also filter your ideas based on what your competitors are also giving or producing in the market. So those are the two. There are so many metrics we can use, but for during my class, I mentioned two, and those are the two that I mentioned. So with this, we have come to the end of. Somebody said it. Okay, I'm just coming to analysis. Okay, we've come to the end of this class. By our next class, we are going to go through the wireframing. That's this our ideas, splitting it into visuals. So see you guys in the next class. With the absence of no question, I believe.
Thank you, ma. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma. Thank you for today's class.
You're welcome. You too. All right, so I think I'll end the class now. Okay, let me stop recording first.